Trump has upped the ante substantially. He wants to end DACA. That's kind of crazy if you were to ask me. Now, it's a challenging argument. For one, personally, I'm in favor of DACA, and I think a lot of these people should be naturalized. A lot of these young people should be offered a path to citizenship. We should do it rather quickly. And I think the compromise between the left and the right now is let's create a functioning path to citizenship. We don't make it super easy. We make sure that people do their due diligence and do right to become citizens. But we also need to secure the border and stop the flow of illegal immigration. The challenge with amnesty is that a lot of people are going to rush in at the last minute to try and get that citizenship. So it is rough. At the very least, however, I say personally, I'm willing to have a discussion about naturalization, though I lean in favor of, and I'm much more in favor of DACA. Like some of these people, they were 6-7 years old. So I think there's a really good reason to say people who were brought here as children, the parents are responsible for this. But I think these are people who grew up in our communities. They're people we know. If you live in a city, you're going to know a lot of these people. And I think it's fair to say DACA is not a bad thing. However, Barack Obama may not have had the right to actually institute it. This should have been a matter for Congress, not executive authority. And it's possible Obama overstepped his legal authority here. In which case, the argument for removing DACA may not actually come down to whether or not Dreamers are deserving of DACA, but whether or not our system was subverted by Obama for political ends. In which case, there is a constitutional argument for Trump ending DACA, in that it should have never happened in the first place, and it's already been a problem. But I want to stress, I'm pretty in favor of it. Sorry, I think that's a fair point. We can't just be all or nothing individuals, and there's a lot of people who, they work here, they live here, they speak the language, they're part of our culture and community, and we need to say, stop it now. Stem the flow. No more illegal immigration. Go harder on border security and immigration rules. But we can provide okay, if you're grandfathered in now, we're good. However, no new arrivals. The problem is the left wants everything. Even the Republicans don't want everything. The left wants naturalization for citizenship. They want open borders. I say open borders. Okay, let's break that down. They want decriminalization of border crossings. They want welfare for non-citizens. They want a path to citizenship for literally everybody. And they want anybody to be able to walk in and then just apply for citizenship. That does not make sense. People will start extracting from your system. They'll start stealing your money and resources. They will come in, they will get healthcare, they will get welfare, and then they will leave. You need to make sure that people in your community are invested in helping that community grow. So you can't just say, doors open, everybody come on in. I feel like I'm the odd person out being like, I like DACA, but I think we need to have a more border security. Because for one, a lot of Republicans are probably straight up like, yeah, and DACA, good. Obama shouldn't have done it in the first place. But the Democrats have gone off the rails. So where does that leave me? They're calling me conservative on immigration. Isn't that crazy? Let's read this story and see what's going on. The Supreme Court on Tuesday was sharply divided over President Trump's move to end Obama-era protections for undocumented immigrants who arrive in the U.S. as children, as the justices heard oral arguments in one of the most closely watched cases of the term. Members of the court's conservative wing appeared wary of allowing court to review the administration's decision to begin phasing out the deferred action to phase out DACA, which grants deferral from deportations for nearly 700,000 undocumented young immigrants. And questions from conservative judges during oral arguments suggested they appeared to think the administration had supplied legally sound reasons for eliminating DACA. I understand a lot of the conservative positions. I think the most sound one is basically, listen, I understand you were brought to this country against your will. That's unfortunate. It is not our job to guarantee that. And so long as we allow DACA, there's going to be people who exploit that system and take advantage of our goodwill. I totally understand that argument. That's why I tend to fall in the position of DACA good, no more. Like, we got to have border security, we got to have more controls. But let's read on. Let's see what the justices think. Don't take my word for it. I'm just simply humble internet man in his bedroom. The Supreme Court, they'll decide. Neil Gorsuch, a Trump appointee, and Samuel Alito, a Bush appointee, seemed concerned that authorizing a review could give judges too much power over executive agency decisions. Can you help me understand what is the limiting principle? Gorsuch asked Theodore Olson, one of two lawyers arguing to preserve DACA. I hear a lot of facts, sympathetic facts you put out there, and they speak to all of us, but what's the limiting principle? John Roberts, a Bush appointee who closely watched as a potential swing vote, also appeared unsure about whether the court had the power to review Trump's decision to terminate the program. This is really, really interesting. The Supreme Court seems concerned that they may not have the power to overrule executive authority. If the executive branch, President Trump, who leads that, says this law enforcement institution can or cannot do X, that's his choice, not the courts. To an extent, and not the Congress. To an extent, Congress can pass laws and change what they can or can't do for sure. But Trump can say, these are how I want you to do your job. It's complicated, but checks and balances, right? The issue here seems to be that the Supreme Court is saying, Obama implemented this, Trump's going to take it out. That's equal in the executive branch. I could be wrong, but that's how it kind of sounds. Michael Mongan, the Deputy Solicitor General of California, who argued alongside Olson for DACA, said the Obama administration's program was consistent with historical deportation relief programs. If Obama can make it with executive authority, Trump can end it with executive authority, right? I mean, that makes sense. Roberts also pushed back against the assertion, saying previous administrations' programs were far less sweeping in their use of prosecutorial discretion. That history is not close to the number of people covered by DACA. Stephen Breyer, Clinton appointee, appeared uncertain about whether the court had the power to review Trump's decision. I'm saying honestly, I am struggling to get the right rule. This is interesting. It's not like a right or left thing. At issue for the justices are two overlapping questions: whether the courts have a right to second guess Trump's action, and if Trump's DACA appeal was lawful. But the oral arguments highlighted the sharp ideological split, with many of the court's liberal members inclined to view the DACA repeal as falling within the court's purview. They also questioned whether the Trump administration had provided an adequate justification for their decision to terminate the program. Above all, the liberal justices questioned the fallout from the decision and whether the administration had appropriately weighed the ramifications of terminating DACA. Put it this way: if they feel they don't even have the right to overturn executive authority, then, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think they can in many regards. They can block Trump if something's unconstitutional. But in this capacity, if they say they can't do it, then Trump wins. Then DACA's gone. Trump just does it. So naturally, the more liberal members are like, we can review this, even though some, one at least saying, no. So I guess I was wrong. I guess it is still, to a degree, a bit partisan. They say a former George W. Bush Solicitor General Olson seemed to gain ground with members of the court's liberal wing during arguments. He told the justices that the Trump administration's earliest stated reason for the rollback, that DACA was illegal, was without merit, letting administration officials upend the lives of hundreds of thousands of people who relied on the deportation relief program without taking responsibility for the decision. Sotomayor, Obama's appointee, was among several liberal justices who questioned whether the administration weighed the impact on DACA recipients, commonly known as Dreamers, who had come to rely on the program. The word reliance was mentioned 46 times during oral arguments. Is it the job of the United States to be concerned about non-citizens? This is a challenge. People who come to this country, regardless of whether you're a citizen or a tourist, you have protections under the Constitution. But it's a problem. It's problematic, I would say, if our courts start weighing in on the well-being of people who aren't even citizens of this country. Is it possible then they might weigh on the interests of people who aren't even here? She asked Solicitor General Noel Francisco, who argued the case on behalf of the Trump administration, at what point the administration took ownership of the consequences of repeal. Where is the political decision made clearly, she asks, that this is not about the law, this is about our choice to destroy lives. Breyer seems skeptical that the Trump administration weighed the fallout of the decision, including beyond those young adults who are DACA recipients. Breyer noted that among the friend of court's briefs filed in this case were healthcare organizations, labor unions, businesses, religious groups, hundreds of educational associations, 6 military organizations, plus states and cities. Breyer, in question of Francisco, said those groups had raised issues which are not quite the same as those of the 700,000 who have never seen any other country. The politically charged case sparked a day of drama in Washington and was one of the most anticipated hearings of the term. Immigration rights advocates gathered on the steps of the court earlier Tuesday morning, where they urged the justices to save the program. Trump also weighed in on the case just hours before the justices met, blasting DACA recipients, commonly known as Dreamers. Many of the people in DACA, no longer very young, are far from angels. Some are very tough, hardened criminals, Trump said in a tweet. Now, I'm going to stop right there and disagree with Trump on this one. Look, man, I get it. That's the angle you want to play. But on average, these Dreamers are just people who grew up in the U.S., plain and simple. Now, I will say, there is a really good argument against the Dreamers. My parents paid taxes. My grandparents, my great-grandparents immigrated to the United States legally. And they paid their taxes, they paid their dues, they became citizens, all that stuff. From their taxes, they helped plant trees with for whose shade they knew they would never sit. And that allowed me to grow up standing on their shoulders as well as the shoulders of other giants who came before me. If I pay to improve my home, my community, and then someone else comes in and brings their kid, why should I support their kid? Now, we can say to the parents, you're not supposed to be here, go away. But then DACA provides protections for these kids whose parents did not pay taxes that help make this country great. Therein lies a bigger challenge. Now, I get it. There's going to be a whole bunch of arguments about colonialism and whatever nonsense. But listen, I'll tell you this. I fully recognize the arguments for and against DACA. I think I begrudgingly accept it. That's why I'm like, listen, man, I think about the individual. I think about that person who's 20 years old today who doesn't even know they weren't a citizen and grew up here and is now shocked to find out they might get sent back to a country they've never been to. And they have started working, they are paying taxes, and they are part of the economy. And so as much as I don't want to incentivize the behavior, I think we can't just, we have to deal with the problem. You know, dealing with the problem doesn't mean we're going to get the solution we want. I think it means compromise. And that's where I end up. So I don't agree with Trump on this one. But, you know, at the end of the day, I guess I'm just a privileged American who doesn't have to worry about it. But hey, you know what? My parents fought. My grandfather was in World War II. My family served in the armed forces. They paid their taxes. They paid their dues. And some of them paid in blood. And now here I am getting to reap the rewards of the society they helped create. To these dreamers, your parents came here illegally. They came here in violation of our norms and our laws. And now you are receiving benefits from that. I'm still willing to help you out. I still think that's the right thing to do. But I do think there has to be some kind of compromise. We have to put a hard limit, figure it out. In the end, I think Trump will win, though. I think Trump's going to win this one and DACA's over. But we'll see what happens. Stick around. I got one more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.